Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Creative Direction with Kelly Bennett. This is a special episode because I have a special guest, Melina Peterson. I had the pleasure of taking a workshop from her at Shopify headquarters in Soho. And right when she started talking and sharing her philosophy, I was following her on all the social media channels and taking so many notes. She's the founder and CEO of Cornerlight Digital. She honestly, everyone, listen up because she really broke down digital marketing and digital ads in a way that I personally hadn't heard before because I used to be really overwhelmed with that process and thinking about ads, even though I've been working in marketing for many years. And the way that she broke it down, it made it so accessible and easy to understand. I was just really like, okay, I need to have you on my podcast, and I want to hear your story and how you built your business and all the things. So thank you so much, Melina, for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Kelly.
You're
That
so
is
welcome.
such a kind intro. No, I'm super excited to be here and just excited to dig in and share a little bit more about my work at Cornerlight.
Yeah, so let's just dive into it. I know that you were working in corporate before you started your own business, and
Mhm.
that also how you've been building your business and being aware of just being a human and taking care of yourself. I would love to hear like that backstory of the build up to launching Cornerlight Digital.
Yeah, definitely. So it was certainly a journey, taking the leap to start my own business. I think it was a really transformative time for me and probably one of the more challenging times in my career. I think before I even dive into how I took the leap to start Cornerlight, I'll give a little bit of background on kind of like my career story. So
Yeah,
I
please.
started my career I'm currently based in New York, but was living out in Los Angeles. Worked at Guess Jeans for their headquarters, managing their social media and digital advertising. And this was very much in the early days of social media
Mm.
and digital marketing, where digital was an afterthought and we were, the team in the room that was trying to get our point across, and everything was still very much geared towards traditional marketing. And so that was a really interesting to experience that, in that this kind of pivot point, let's say like 2013, that era
Mhm.
onwards, to see really how things were starting to transform. And so that job took me to New York, where I then kind of took my brand side experience, moved to New York to work at a larger agency, and it was actually specifically focused on paid social, which again, I moved to New York in 2016. And this was, now looking back, very much like the early days of paid social as well.
Yeah,
Um,
2016, absolutely.
yeah. And it's interesting because when you have the context of how things have changed, it's interesting to see. But at the time, it was this growing industry. And so I was, because I had worked in the fashion and retail industry, worked with a lot of clients that were also fashion brands, beauty brands. So worked Tory Burch, Barney's New York, RIP when they were still around,
Right.
Estee Lauder companies. And so really got like this, kind of deepened my experience in the industry, but specifically in paid social, which was, at the time felt a little bit niche for an agency to be focused on, but really was able to see that growth. So the reason why I give that background is kind of to set the stage for then me taking the leap to transition out of that agency to start Cornerlight. So I was at that agency for about 2.5 years, or so, or maybe actually almost 3 years. And I would say honestly, about a year in, I knew that it wasn't going to be my long-term career. And I think in general, the way that people approach jobs today it's not like
It's
our
not a
parents'
forever.
generation. Yeah, it's like
Right.
my dad was in his job for 25, 30 years.
Right.
So but I knew pretty quickly, I wanted something different, but I really at the time only saw a few possible pathways. It was like the agency was either a feeder into working at a social media platform, like on the platform side, or working, back at a brand managing their digital advertising, or you could, of course, go into a similar agency role. And none of those really resonated with me. And I think that the main reason was because aside from, wanting to switch up my day to day, I was looking for some like more intangible in terms of the freedom and the flexibility that
Yes.
having my own business or going out on my own would afford me. And so I didn't have this vision like I'm going to start Cornerlight Digital, I'm going to build up an agency for myself. I just knew I want to have more control over the clients that I take on, the way that I work, the team that I build. I want to have more. I don't want my calendar to just be open for anyone to book at any given time. I want to kind of like figure out how to curate my schedule. And so that I think was like honestly the biggest motivation for starting to figure out, okay, how do I take a slightly more uncharted path in terms of, when I think about the coworkers that I worked with, like nobody was really going out on their own as their next job. And it was it was uncharted territory for me. So I really took it took a lot of kind of like mental agility and strength and belief in myself that I could take the leap into something that felt a lot more unknown and financially was also much more of an unknown. And I really took about a solid year of overlap in terms of starting to build up my own kind of freelancing roster and taking on freelancing side projects while I was working at the agency. And honestly, at the height of it was probably working like 70, 80 hours a week, which is not
Oh, wow.
sustainable at
No,
all. But
that's
it
not
was,
sustainable.
yeah, so I don't recommend, but it was something that I felt like being someone that I take calculated risks. So I felt like I
Mm.
needed to have some sort of traction before I took the full leap. But
Thank you
eventually I
for
got to a
sharing
place.
that
Yeah.
because I feel like so many people put pressure on themselves that if they want to start their own business or they really want to be an entrepreneur, they have to burn everything else to the ground before they start. And
Yeah.
I really like how you broke that down and like gave yourself that year of saying, okay, I'm going to start and I'm going to get to a point where I have to choose, but I'm going to bet on myself that once I get to that point, I'll feel more confident taking that leap. Does that
Oh,
resonate?
completely. Yeah. And I think that um even just it can give you this little boost of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost think about it, it's like training wheels, learning to ride a bike. You still
Yes.
have the security of, okay, if that project doesn't land, cool, I've got my 9 to 5 job. I think that the one thing I will say is it the challenge with doing it the way that I did is you may find yourself working 2 jobs at once,
Right.
but that almost is a forcing function to then, to your point, force you to choose because it isn't sustainable. And then, at one point you will likely be pushed towards the path that you're, meant to go on.
I love that. And also to test to see if you want to be a small business owner. It's not for
Definitely.
everyone.
It's
It's
not.
really not. So I really like how you approach that because I think a lot of creatives could resonate that with that, especially service based, right? And
Yeah.
also figuring out like how does it work to work with you? What is your process? What's that container you work with someone in? And really flushing that out before you go all in on it to try to sell and market it full time and have that be the main source of your income. Being able to
Hmm.
flush that out while you have the 9 to 5 is really smart. I
Yeah.
love that approach. What helped you start getting those freelance clients in the beginning? Because I'm sure it was like maybe wearing like your corporate hat for your job,
Yeah.
but then also you have to put on your other hat of like, no, you could hire me freelance and like I could help you with your business. So, how did you start navigating with that? Because I feel like for most creatives I talk with and work with, that's really a challenge of like stepping into that role.
Definitely. I think that the really network and community has
Mm,
been everything for me. It has been, I would say, where, over the course of since starting Cornerlight, have gotten like 90% of my clients. And so really I leaned into just putting it out in the world that I wanted to try something new and that I was open to taking on new projects. And so my first project was actually with an old colleague of mine who used to work at Guess, who started a early stage startup. And I got sort of comfortable with what how to structure working on a brand on the side, what that would look like. And then from there, I think my next small project was my partner's friend of a friend had a company, and just by telling the people that are closest to you, first of all, hey, just putting on your radar, I'm looking for this. But then I think that there's also the power. So I was a sociology major in college, and something that I think about a lot is this concept of the strength of weak ties. So that's like a sociological concept where it's the idea that actually your wider network may be more helpful, or you may get more opportunities from people that like you maybe don't even know as well. And so the way that I capitalized on that was I joined a women's entrepreneurship community where there were a lot of female business owners. Some of them were doing it full time. Some of them were doing it on the side. And so that was actually this perfect opportunity where we would go to, networking breakfasts and introduce ourselves. And there would be people who were starting small businesses. And then I was saying, hey, I have this skill set. And I really just took it project by project. And I think that something that helped me is just seeing like it's all this cumulative effort. And so you really have to start somewhere. You set a price, whatever you feel at the time, is that you're confident enough to ask for. You get a yes from that person. Then your next project, maybe you realize, oh, I undercharged. I could have adjusted my services differently. And then you just like slightly adjust for the next project. And so
Yes.
it was really this like step-by-step process.
Thank you again for sharing that transparency, because I hear that a lot from creatives who are starting service-based businesses of like, well, what should I price it at and how should it work? I'm like, choose something that makes sense enough off of what you've already done and what you feel like the market could say yes to. But most likely, you're going to adjust and refine as you go. And if you're not, actually, that's a little bit of a red flag, because you always want to be refining your business and your craft and just keep getting better and better at it. So thank you for sharing that. I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves that it has to be perfect right out of the gate. But it's something that's a living, breathing thing also, like us, like humans, that will always be evolving as we evolve. So thank you for saying that. I think that's a super helpful. I'm going to like circle that and highlight that. As far as like advice, if you are a creative listening, which I know so many are, who are starting service-based small businesses, take that advice. That's so solid. Let's talk a little bit more about Cornerlight Digital and what you do. Again, I was such a nerd in your workshop. I took so many notes. I was literally also texting with clients. I'm like, I'm in this workshop. Oh, it was like a live feed. I'm like, I'm in this workshop. I'm taking all the notes. You need to also follow her, look up this business. So could you break down a little bit more? Because again, like anything else, once it becomes popular, it's like you hear all these myths and tricks and hacks and blah, blah. Can you break down just like the basics of running a good ad and like how to wrap your head around getting started running ads?
Yeah, definitely. So just to give a little background on Cornerlight and kind of the work that we're doing. So we are a paid social advertising agency. And what that means is we work with different businesses to figure out how we can leverage the advertising capabilities on social media platforms such as Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, you name it, anything that is in that sort of social media sphere that is based off of like audience-based buying, meaning that you're targeting audiences of people who are spending time on those platforms and you are serving them specific creative for your business, we figure out the best way to leverage those targeting capabilities based off of a brand's business goals. So really work with companies across different verticals. Have worked with large media companies like Forbes to retail brands. Guess Jeans became a client.
Well, that's
Wellness
wait,
companies.
that's a pause full circle moment. Okay, I just wanted to.
That was a full
moment.
circle moment.
Okay, that's really fucking cool. I'll just say that.
I will say, going back to the money conversation, it was also a full circle moment to realize the entry level salary that I had as a assistant, social media assistant at Guess, compared to the agency retainer that you can charge as a business owner. It was just a huge unlock for me in terms of how to think about money and business and the difference between a, salary for a full-time employee versus like a service-based business. So that was a big moment for me.
I love. Okay, that is so good. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No.
Give that shout out. Yes.
And then let's see so the last thing I'll say is wellness companies like Sakara Life was a long-term client of ours.
Cool.
So definitely dabble across many different industries, which keeps things very interesting. I think, Kelly, to answer your second question around, how businesses can think about running advertising and running successful ads. And something that I talk about in, the training that you attended with Shopify and a lot of the workshops that I run is really breaking it down to understanding like your marketing funnel and understanding that you want to reach people. Like not everybody is ready to buy right this instant. And so you have to meet people where they're at in their customer journey. So what that might mean is there's going to be people who are like, think about it like a concentric circle. Like there's this inner circle, which includes your best friends, your parents, people that know you really well that are going to buy anything that you sell, right? So that's your warmest audience. Then as we move out, you then are finding people, okay, who, they're in your target market. Let's say you have a dog accessory brand. You're like, okay, there are people who just got a puppy. They, are fashion forward and want to have cute accessories. They're going to be, in that next target market. But then there's going to be all these other people that may not necessarily know about your brand. Maybe they, are just a little bit outside of that target market that they may eventually become pet owners. They may eventually be ready to buy, but you want to ensure that you're delivering different messages to those different people. And you can also do that by running different types of campaigns against those different audiences. So I think just kind of taking a step back and thinking like, okay, who is my target audience? Who do I want to reach? And starting from somewhere. So maybe, in this example of this dog accessory company, maybe you're like, cool, I want to focus on new pet owners who have, who live in cities, who have more of like a fashion forward lens. And from there, you can then curate an ad that's going to really speak to those people. And the big thing about ad creative that is really important is you want to ensure that your ad is answering a few questions for people up front. So you want to make sure it's clear this is a dog accessory brand, so you can buy, leashes or collars. You want to ensure that you are, showcasing the product and also delivering on like, what problem is this solving in people's lives? Like, what is the benefit to purchasing your product? What is the, ultimate, result of them? Maybe it's just a happy puppy or you have a cute dog, but ensuring that is very clear in really like the first 3 seconds of your video, because and always looking at any sort of ad from the context of like, how would someone who doesn't know my brand perceive this ad, and is it clear what I'm selling right off the bat?
I love that. I told you I take so many notes when I'm listening to your what you're sharing and your philosophy on it. It's so good. And also you make it feel a lot more approachable. I've been in
Thank
many a
you.
rooms. You're welcome. I've been in many a rooms when people are talking about ads and it gets really into, I mean, numbers and data is important.
Yeah.
Yes. But so data driven that as a creative, it just is like, whoop, I lost the plot. I'm not quite sure what's happening anymore. But if you could wheel it in a little bit, but so that's why also I love how you approach it. You make it feel really creative and you make it feel really tangible to wrap your head around, that it's not some like mystical thing that you hit, publish for an ad and then it does this mysterious thing.
Yeah.
Like there's strategy, there's a curation of a story. So I really, really love your approach. How does a brand know that they're ready for that next step? Like, what do you look for of like, ooh, okay, you all are ready. Let's get started curating campaigns and digital ads. Like, what is that cusp? Because I think someone also listening could be like, okay, I'm on that step. Like, this is
Hmm.
the next step for me.
So, is the question more ready to actually dive into paid advertising?
Yes. Yes.
I will say that it is something that you can really start right away.
Okay.
It isn't necessarily something you need to wait for. However, that it's going to depend on your business model and and kind of your customer acquisition strategy. So, for example, you might have there might be a small business that is initially garners all their customers from word of mouth, from partnerships, from maybe you have a brick and mortar store where people are just passing by. And so in that case, I think like lean into what feels most natural as a means of like how people are finding you. And that isn't always going to be paid as right off the bat.
Right.
However, if let's say you start your company and you are finding that you are not getting a lot of traction, maybe you've done the word of mouth marketing, you've reached out to your network, you've, connected with different business communities and people, and you're kind of hitting a wall. That's usually an indicator of, okay, maybe that organic route isn't
Mhm.
necessarily going to be the thing to really take off your business, and it's like finding a way to layer in paid advertising almost as like a parallel path while you're also diving into to building up your brand organically. So I guess that would be like one example of how to like if an indicator essentially that it might be time to explore different channels.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. And I think for many creative small business owners can feel very intimidated running ads or even stepping into this space because they're like, I don't know if I'm ready. So I think you just breaking down like you could be ready from the beginning
Yeah.
and there's not necessarily like a magic moment for it. If you, I love how you saying running parallel to organic because that's what I really focus on and helping people organically tell their story, organically build community. Because I feel like you need both, even if you have awesome ads, but you don't have anything when people start clicking around and looking at your
Mhm.
business and brand, right? So I think that it's a really good thing for people to start wrapping their head around of like, this is really important. And here's when you could get started. And you could get started now.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say on that is, a lot of the actually early work that I did with smaller brands and startups was using paid social as a means of like early market testing.
Ooh,
So,
okay. Tell us more.
yeah, this can be really interesting, especially as you're figuring out the kinds of creatives that you want to invest in, whether that's even like your brand identity, the just general types of creatives you're putting on your site, as well as organically. So there are ways that you can run a campaign even before you've like launched your brand, where let's say you put different types of messaging in different ads, and maybe you're testing, okay, let's see, I'm going to create an ad with maybe it's a founder story, and it feels very
Mm.
more like UGC or user generated content. It feels a lot more natural and organic. Then you're going to do like you can do a test shoot where you do something in studio, and you can then actually run ads kind of like almost behind the scenes where you're reaching new audiences and you're seeing like what drives a higher click-through rate, what messages are people, resonating with, and that could actually help inform a larger creative strategy of what you want to invest in. And this doesn't require a ton of money. I mean, you could spend a few $100s even just to get some like initial like click-based data. But I've seen that work well, especially for like small businesses that are just getting started, of just like doing a little bit of testing to start.
I literally just put stars all around what you just said, and I'm going to add that to my to-do list because that is so brilliant. I love that. And again, making it feel really approachable and tangible to get started. It doesn't have to be this big, scary, daunting thing. That's a really great example of how to get started in testing to get it going.
Totally.
Thank you so much. This is, oh my gosh. I know people are going to, I know they're going to be obsessed with this episode, and they're like, okay, I can get my head around this now. Yes, absolutely. So to close off this episode, I could talk to you for hours. I think you're so interesting. What are some things that you do just to help yourself stay creative?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but aside from Cornerlight Digital, I've always had kind of creative side projects over the course of really since I was in college, starting with, back in the day, OG fashion blog when blogging was a thing,
Love
in
it.
2011. But one thing that helps me is having a creative outlet that is different from the business work that I'm doing. So I have a site and social accounts called Fifth Floor Walkup that are all about like home decor. So I was inspired moving to New York, decorating my apartment. Now moving to Brooklyn, I'm on a third floor walkup, so it's still somewhat relevant. And that has been an interesting way to just like almost build my personal brand in a way that is adjacent to the work that I'm doing at Cornerlight, but not necessarily directly related. And I find that, so the agency work that we do with Cornerlight is actually quite creative, especially when we're strategizing with clients on, the best types of ads to run. And we're figuring out, how do we match that audience with the right type of creative. But I would say it probably leans a little bit heavier, like data driven. So having this outlet on the side where, I'm posting about my plants, like the one in the background.
I started following. It's awesome.
I love it. Yes. So that's been nice to just have something that feels a little bit separate. And I think that really prioritizing and giving myself the space for that. And then I'll also say, and this kind of relates to creativity, but having a like spiritual or wellness practice, that really helps ground me, has been so key in navigating life as a small business owner and also staying creative. So something, right?
Tell us more.
Right. It's like it's a non-negotiable for me at this point. And the big thing for me has been yoga. So I have been practicing really consistently since 2017, but I would say, especially starting at the beginning of the pandemic, it became something where rather than seeing it as, oh, like I have to work out, I have to work out after I work, it's like almost a precursor. Like if I don't do my yoga practice, I will not be able to work. I will not be able to be creative, because it is just such a game changer in terms of the shift that I feel when I'm, in the flow, and also like before my yoga practice and after. And I actually find it's a great way to even creatively like problem solve. I know that, you're probably supposed to like clear your mind during a yoga practice, but I kind of just let the thoughts free flow. And I find that something that I may have been spending hours sitting at my laptop, like not able to troubleshoot or problem solve, just totally unlocks when I'm, out away from my desk in a true like flow in many ways. And so that has been huge for me, both like for mental health and then also kind of like leaning into more creative work.
Thank you for sharing that because, as we mentioned earlier, when you are creative building a small business and it's really based off of your creativity, right?
Yeah.
There's such a nuance to having you're a creative and you have a creative small business,
Right.
right? It's like you are the business is you. And so I really like how you stated that. So for you to get grounded, for you to just collect yourself to be able to show up more for your life and for your business and to have more of that creative flow, that's such a great reminder because I know for myself I could get caught in the loop of like being on my computer all the time, being on social all the time, and then you're like reacting to everything versus being more intentional. So I really like how you said that. And then that's a great reminder. I know so many creatives can get burnt out or feeling stuck or frustrated. So like coming back to themselves and having some sort of spiritual wellness practice before they start their work, I think is such a great tip too.
Yeah. And a big thing for me has been building it into my schedule and managing almost like using your schedule as this blank template to lean into creativity or deep work or calls. And so the way that I do that is like certain days I really only take calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and those are my call days. Those are not really my creative days. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that leaves more space, whether it's separate creative work separate from Cornerlight or more like larger level strategy, just having that built out into the schedule. And then also having the yoga blocks, whether it's a planned class or recording, that is in my schedule like a meeting where, it really, unless I need to shift it by like 30 minutes, like it doesn't move.
I
And
love
that has
that.
helped me just kind of like almost operationalize my
Right.
day to ensure that I'm actually making it happen.
I love that. And I have a very similar schedule of like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I have calls, but Mondays and Fridays, I don't.
Yeah.
Unless I'm like recording a cool
Yeah.
podcast that I'm like, okay, that's a fun creative thing I could do on a
Yeah.
Friday. Everyone, we're recording on a Friday, but I don't take calls because I agree. Like it's a different part of my brain. And for
Mm-hmm.
me to be creative, I need days where I don't have to talk to anyone and I could just like do my thing. So I think that's also a really helpful piece of advice where when you are a small business owner, you have that flexibility going back to your first original point of why you got
Mm-hmm.
started. You can make those rules. You can
Yeah.
set your schedule that you talk to people on Tuesdays and Thursdays if that works best for you. And I think sometimes we just need those reminders of like, you have permission to build a business that really aligns with your creative flow and like how you show up best. And I would say sooner than later, building that in. So thank you for sharing that because I know so many people will find that really helpful of just being like, okay, I can do this and like feel good about creating those boundaries where when you're in small business, you feel like maybe you have to do everything for everyone. So creating those boundaries and sticking to them consistently sounds like that's been a really impactful way that you've been growing.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, this was so helpful and so insightful. How can people connect with you personally, your business, and also your creative side projects that I'm also following that I love?
Yeah. So let's see. On social media, you'll find probably me personally, as well as Fifth Floor Walk Up, my home decor creative project. So on Instagram, it's Melina_Peterson, and then Fifth Floor Walk Up blog. And then I'm also navigating and dipping my toes into TikTok. So
Love it.
similarly, just getting started on my personal TikTok, Melina_Peterson, and then it's just Fifth Floor Walk Up on TikTok. But for Cornerlight Digital, we're not as active organically on social. I feel like we're just like busy behind the scenes running all the ads for all of our
That's
clients.
fair.
um so we focus our energies there. But if you're interested in the work that we do, just headed head to our website, cornerlightdigital.com. There's also a kind of like new client questionnaire, intake form that you can fill out if you're interested in working with us. And then, myself or someone on our team will send more information just about our pricing and the work that we do. But that's probably the best way to get in touch from the business side.
Love it. And anyone listening who's in New York, definitely check out Melina's workshops because they're so helpful. Get a pen and paper and you're going to nerd out and learn so much. I honestly, your one class that I took was such a game changer for me. So if you're listening and you're in the city, definitely look for upcoming workshops.
Yep. Really excited. Hope to have some more at Shopify and in Soho in the spring. So
okay, perfect. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time and insight. And thank you everyone for listening. Bye.
Thanks.